investigations. That would be highly inappropriate. Well, now, that's interesting, Kennedy drawled, reaching into his briefcase with theatrical slowness. Because I got a phone call here from last Tuesday that tells a different story. The hearing room fell dead silent as Kennedy produced a small digital recorder. Schiff's face began to drain of color as the implications hit him like a freight train. You see, Adam, when you're dumb enough to use an unsecured phone line to coordinate with CNN, that ain't illegal surveillance. That's just you being stupid. Kennedy pressed play, and Schiff's unmistakable voice filled the chamber. Jake, I need you to run with the Russia story tomorrow. I know there's no real evidence, but we need to keep the narrative alive until after the midterms. The American people are too stupid to understand the nuances. The hearing room erupted. Republicans began applauding, while Democrats sat in stunned silence. Schiff's hands began visibly shaking as he realized the magnitude of what had just been revealed. That recording is illegal, Schiff shouted over the chaos. How did you— Son, Kennedy interrupted with a gentle smile. When you're coordinating fake news on an open phone line, you ain't got no expectation of privacy. That's evidence of conspiracy to defraud the American people. The cameras captured every moment of Schiff's growing panic, his perfectly styled hair now showing signs of perspiration, his confident demeanor cracking like ice on a Louisiana pond in spring. The Mueller testimony. Contradiction. Kennedy wasn't finished. Now, Adam, let's talk about your relationship with Special Counsel Mueller. You testified under oath that you never spoke privately with Mueller about his investigation, didn't you? Schiff, still reeling from the recording, tried to regain his composure. That's correct. I maintained appropriate boundaries throughout the investigation. Well, that's another interesting statement, Kennedy said, producing a thick manila folder. Because I got visitor logs here from the Justice Department showing 12 private meetings between you and Robert Mueller during his investigation. The blood drained from Schiff's face as Kennedy displayed the official logs on the chamber's monitors. Meeting after meeting, clearly showing Reverend Adam Schiff, private consultation with timestamps and duration. But that ain't the best part, Adam, Kennedy continued, his voice gaining prosecutorial edge. You see, I also got recordings of some of them meetings. Schiff's attorneys began frantically whispering in his ear, but Kennedy was already pressing play on a second recorder. Schiff's voice, unmistakably clear, filled the chamber. Robert, just remember when they ask about evidence during your testimony, you say it's classified. Don't give them anything they can use to exonerate Trump. We need this investigation to last through the election. Mueller's voice responded, Adam, I'm not comfortable with this. The evidence supports whatever we say it supports. Schiff's recorded voice interrupted. You work for me now, not the Justice Department. The hearing room exploded in chaos. Republican senators were on their feet, demanding immediate criminal referrals, while Democrats sat in horrified silence. Schiff tried to stand his legs, visibly shaking. That's taken out of context, he screamed over the noise. This is a partisan witch hunt. Kennedy's voice cut through the chaos like a church bell on Sunday morning. Adam, the only thing out of context here is you sitting in the United States Senate. The family money trail. Now, let's talk about your family, Adam, Kennedy said, his tone becoming more serious. Your wife Eve runs a consulting business, doesn't she? Schiff, desperate to change the subject to safer ground, nodded eagerly. Yes, my wife is a successful businesswoman. Her work is completely separate from my congressional duties. Is that so? Kennedy asked, producing another folder. Because I got bank records here showing your wife received a $500,000 consulting fee from something called the Democratic Truth Initiative on March 15, 2017. My wife's business relationships are private, Schiff replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Kennedy's smile was predatory. Well, that's funny. Because March 15, 2017 was the exact same day you announced the House Intelligence Committee would be expanding its Russia investigation, same day down to the hour. The monitors displayed bank records showing the transfer timestamped just 2 hours after Schiff's press conference announcing the expanded investigation. But that ain't all. Kennedy continued, enjoying every moment of Schiff's visible distress. I also got an email here from the Democratic Truth Initiative to your wife's company. Care to guess what it says? Kennedy displayed the email on the monitors. Payment for Adam's cooperation in maintaining the Russia narrative. Additional bonuses available for extended timeline. Schiff was now visibly hyperventilating. My wife's business is legitimate. This is character assassination. In my neck of the woods, we call taking money to fabricate evidence a bribe, Kennedy said calmly. Y'all in California must call it Tuesday. The hearing room erupted again this time, with reporters frantically typing on their phones and tablets. Schiff bribery was already trending on social media. The classified document delivery service, Kennedy reached for his final folder from round one, his movements deliberate and theatrical. Adam, let me ask you something simple. You ever accidentally leave classified documents somewhere? Schiff, desperately grasping for any safe harbor, replied with forced confidence. Of course not, Senator Kennedy. That would be a serious breach of protocol. I've always handled classified information with the utmost care. Well, that's real interesting, Kennedy drawled, because I got some photos here that tell a different story. The monitors flickered to life, showing high-definition security camera footage of a parking garage. The timestamp read March 22, 2017, 11:47 p.m. This here's the parking garage underneath the Watergate complex, Kennedy explained as the footage played. That's your BMW there, license plate Intel 1, if I'm not mistaken. Schiff's face went white as he recognized his own car on the screen. Now watch this, Adam, Kennedy continued as the footage showed a figure approaching the car. That's you, placing a manila envelope on your front seat. Real careful-like. The camera angle changed, showing Schiff clearly placing documents in his car, looking around nervously before walking away. But here's where it gets interesting, Kennedy said, his voice gaining momentum. 37 minutes later, we got this. The footage switched to show a different person approaching Schiff's car, retrieving the envelope and walking away. That there's Ms. Sarah Patterson, senior producer at CNN, Kennedy explained. Real nice lady, I'm sure. But I'm curious, Adam, how'd classified documents about the Russia investigation end up in her hands? Schiff tried to interrupt, but Kennedy wasn't finished. You see, we also got this, Kennedy said, displaying another piece of footage. This time, it showed Schiff inside his congressional office, clearly photographing classified documents with his personal cell phone. Adam, you didn't accidentally leave them documents. Kennedy said, his country boy delivery making the revelation even more devastating. You were running a classified document delivery service out of your congressional office. Schiff's voice cracked as he tried to respond. This is illegal surveillance. You can't... Son, Kennedy interrupted. When you're committing felonies in federal buildings, them security cameras ain't surveillance, they're evidence. The hearing room was in complete chaos now. Schiff's attorneys were frantically trying to whisper damage control strategies, while Republican senators called for immediate arrest. Democratic senators began quietly slipping out of the chamber, unwilling to be associated with what was clearly a sinking ship. Kennedy leaned back in his chair, satisfied with the first round's devastation. Adam, you turned the House Intelligence Committee into your personal leak factory. You sold out America's secrets for political gain, and you got your family rich doing it. Schiff slumped in his chair, his perfect political facade completely shattered. His hands shook uncontrollably as he realized this was only the beginning. Round one's done, Adam, Kennedy said with a gentle smile that somehow managed to be more terrifying than any scream. But we got a lot more dancing to do before this song's over. As Chairman Grassley called for a brief recess, Schiff remained frozen in his chair, surrounded by frantic attorneys and the wreckage of his carefully constructed lies. The first blood had been drawn, and everyone in the chamber knew that Senator John Kennedy was just getting warmed up. The Russia collusion hoax, the lie that had defined American politics for 4 years, had been exposed as exactly what Kennedy knew. It was a criminal conspiracy orchestrated by a corrupt congressman who thought he was above the law. But this was just the appetizer. The main course was yet to come. The 15-minute recess felt like an eternity for Adam Schiff. He sat hunched in a side room, his expensive attorneys huddled around him like doctors around a terminal patient. The confidence that had carried him through 8 years of congressional power was evaporating like morning dew in the Louisiana sun. "Senator," his lead attorney whispered urgently, "we need to consider a plea agreement. Kennedy clearly has more—" "Absolutely not," Schiff hissed, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "This is political theater. I can handle some country lawyer with a funny accent." But deep down, Schiff knew something had fundamentally changed. The recording, the documents, the evidence, it was all too precise, too devastating. Kennedy hadn't just stumbled onto this information. He'd been building a case with prosecutorial precision. When the hearing reconvened, Kennedy sat calmly at his table, a new folder placed prominently in front of him. This one was thicker than the others, bound with red tape that seemed to pulse with ominous significance. "Senator Kennedy," Chairman Grassley announced, "you may continue with your presentation." Kennedy stood slowly, his movements deliberate and predatory. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Adam," he said, turning to face Schiff directly, "let's talk about your extracurricular activities." Schiff straightened in his chair, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "I'm not sure what you mean, Senator Kennedy." Kennedy's smile was gentle, almost grandfatherly. "Well, Adam, are you familiar with the Standard Hotel in West Hollywood?" The effect was immediate and devastating. Schiff's face went completely white, as if every drop of blood had suddenly drained from his body. His hands, already trembling, began to shake visibly. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. I may have heard of it," Schiff stammered, his voice barely audible. "Now I know why they call you Little Adam," Kennedy said with folksy charm that somehow made the words more terrifying. "Because you got caught doing big crimes in little places. The surprise witness." Kennedy gestured toward an empty chair that had been placed near the witness table. "Adam, do you know why we have that empty chair over there?" Schiff's eyes darted to the chair, then back to Kennedy, confusion mixing with growing terror. No, I don't understand." "Well, let me help you understand," Kennedy said, nodding toward the chamber's rear entrance. The doors opened, and a woman in her 40s entered under heavy security escort. She wore simple clothes, her face bearing the haunted expression of someone who had seen unspeakable things. Federal marshals flanked her as she walked slowly toward the witness chair. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kennedy announced, "I'd like you to meet Ms. Patricia Williams, former head of security at the Standard Hotel." Schiff's reaction was instantaneous and dramatic. He tried to stand his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. This is a setup," he screamed, his voice cracking. "This person is lying. This is a violation of—" "Adam," Kennedy said gently, "why don't you let the lady speak before you start calling her a liar?" Ms. Williams took her seat, her hands trembling as she adjusted the microphone. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but steady, carrying the weight of long-suppressed truth. "On the night of January 7th, 2017, she began, "I was working the overnight security shift at the Standard Hotel. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Congressman Schiff arrived with a young person." Schiff's attorneys were frantically whispering in his ear, but he seemed unable to hear them. His eyes were fixed on the witness with the intensity of a man watching his own execution. The person Congressman Schiff brought appeared to be very young. Ms. Williams continued, her voice growing stronger. "Maybe 10 or 11 years old, African-American male. The child seemed disoriented, like he'd been given something." The hearing room fell into absolute silence. Even the usual background noise of shuffling papers and whispered conversations had stopped completely. I saw Congressman Schiff escort the child to one of our penthouse suites, she continued. About 4 hours later, there was an emergency call. The child had overdosed. Schiff finally found his voice. This is complete fabrication, ma'am. You're clearly being paid to— Senator Schiff, Ms. Williams interrupted, her voice gaining strength. You offered my family $2 million to stay quiet. We took it because we were scared. But I can't live with this anymore. Kennedy moved to the evidence table, his movements careful and deliberate. Ms. Williams, you kept some insurance, didn't you? She nodded, tears beginning to flow. I kept video files from the security cameras. I was afraid something like this would happen again. And what do those video files show? Kennedy asked gently. They show Congressman Schiff arriving with the child. They show him leaving alone 4 hours later. And they show the cleanup crew he brought in afterward. Kennedy turned to Schiff, whose face had gone beyond pale to an almost greenish hue. Adam, you want to tell us about that cleanup crew, the hotel manager's secret recording. Schiff was desperately trying to regain control. I was never at the Standard Hotel on any night in question. This woman is clearly lying for money. Kennedy's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. That's funny, Adam, because the hotel manager kept a little insurance policy of his own. Kennedy produced a small digital recorder similar to the one that had destroyed Schiff's Russia collusion lies. You see, when you're managing a hotel that caters to powerful people, sometimes you got to protect yourself. He pressed play, and Schiff's voice filled the chamber, clear and unmistakable. Listen carefully. I need everything cleaned. I don't care what it costs. Get rid of the sheets, the mattress, everything. Bring in a hazmat team if you have to. Another voice responded, Sir, shouldn't we call the police? The child is— You call nobody, Schiff's recorded voice snapped. This never happened. Do you understand me? This never happened. The recording continued with Schiff giving detailed instructions for the cover-up, including specific directions for body disposal and scene cleaning. Schiff was now hyperventilating. That could be anyone voice technology can fake. Adam, Kennedy interrupted, producing another document. That recording includes you giving your full congressional credit card number to pay for the cleanup crew. You want me to read that number out loud? The $7 million payment. Kennedy reached for another folder, this one marked with FBI evidence tags. Now, Adam, let me ask you something simple. You ever write a check for $7 million? Schiff, still reeling from the recording, tried to focus on the question. That's an absurd amount. Of course not. I don't have that kind of money. Well, that's interesting, Kennedy said, producing a blown-up image of a cashier's check. Because this here's a bank-certified check for exactly $7 million drawn on your family trust account. The monitors displayed the check clearly. Schiff's signature was unmistakable at the bottom, and the memo line read, Standard Hotel Incident Settlement, Final Payment. But that ain't the interesting part, Kennedy continued. The interesting part is who you made it out to. The camera zoomed in on the payee line, Williams Family Trust, Silence Agreement. Kennedy turned to the witness. Ms. Williams, you want to tell us about that check? Ms. Williams nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. Congressman Schiff's lawyers contacted us 3 days after it happened. They said if we ever spoke about what we saw, our family would be destroyed. But they also offered us money to relocate and stay quiet. How much money? Kennedy asked gently. $7 million, she whispered, for our silence about the death of that child. Schiff was now standing, his voice reaching a hysterical pitch. This is attorney-client privilege. You can't— Son, Kennedy said calmly, attorney-client privilege don't cover murder money. The hearing room erupted as Schiff actually tried to leave his seat and walked toward the exit. Federal marshals quickly blocked his path, and his attorneys forcibly guided him back to his chair. Sit down, Adam, Kennedy commanded, his folksy demeanor replaced by prosecutorial authority. We ain't finished with you yet. He added the Anthony Bourdain connection. Kennedy opened yet another folder, this one containing what appeared to be cell phone records. Adam, you remember Anthony Bourdain? Schiff, now slumped in his chair like a broken man, barely responded. I never met Anthony Bourdain. That's curious, Kennedy said, producing a restaurant receipt. Because this here's a receipt from Guelaguetza Restaurant in Los Angeles, dated June 5th, 2018. That's your American Express card number at the bottom, and it shows dinner for two. The receipt was displayed on the monitors, clearly showing Schiff's name and credit card information. But the real interesting part, Kennedy continued, is what Mr. Bourdain texted to his producer that same night. Kennedy displayed a series of text messages on the monitors. Something's not right about this Schiff guy. He keeps talking about some hotel incident. Says he needs my help to manage the narrative. I think he's involved in something really bad. Adam Schiff is having me followed. These people are dangerous. The final text, sent just hours before Bourdain's death, was chilling. If something happens to me, look into the Standard Hotel and Adam Schiff. Mr. Bourdain died 3 days later, Kennedy said, his voice heavy with moral weight. Apparent suicide in France. But according to French police reports I obtained, there were some interesting details. Kennedy displayed the French police report translated into English. 2 unidentified Asian males observed leaving subject's hotel 1 hour before body discovery. Subjects avoided security cameras and left no identifying evidence. Those same 2 men, Kennedy continued, were photographed with you in Los Angeles just 2 weeks before Mr. Bourdain's death. The photographs were devastating. Clear images of Schiff meeting with 2 men who matched the French police description perfectly. Anthony Bourdain died because he had a conscience, Kennedy said, his voice rising with moral authority. Something you wouldn't understand, Adam. The live hotel security